Welcome to the episode where we talk about the power of podcast guesting. Listen, this is an excellent way for you to grow influence without having your own show. You know, in this podcast series, we've been talking all about the benefits of having a podcast and why you should start your show. But let's talk today about how you can utilize other people's podcasts as a space to grow your credibility and to increase your visibility. So, without further ado, let me welcome you to the show. And if you are joining us on YouTube, welcome to my new studio. I am so excited to take this podcast to the next level and really use video as an expanded piece of content. So welcome to Empowered Endeavors, the place where business strategy and purpose come together to turn your passion into a platform and a place to take your ideas to implementation so that you can actually leave a lasting positive impact on this crazy, crazy world that we live in. I am your host, Shaunna Lee. I am the best-selling author of So You're Divorced, So What? And I am a business consultant to entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and aspiring storytellers. So today, again, we are jumping into the power of podcast guesting, and we're going to talk all about how and why, and kind of walk you through the 3 steps of why this is important to you. So if you want to grow your visibility and you're looking ways to expand on your credibility in your niche, in your area of expertise, being a guest on a podcast is an excellent tactic. So first, we're going to talk about why it works. I'm going to give you some ins and outs of why you should even consider that. And then secondly, we're going to talk about how the heck do you do it? How do you get booked on podcasts? And then third, we are going to talk about how to maximize your appearance. So when you're on that stage, the virtual audio stage, how do you maximize your time with that audience and that host in a way that best serves you and the audience that you're speaking to? So first of all, we want to jump into why the heck does it work? Why is this a good strategy for you to consider? So here's the thing about being a guest on someone else's podcast. They've already grown the audience. They've created this engaged audience who is there to listen on that particular topic. Your job is to show up, add some value, be yourself, and get the opportunity to introduce yourself to a whole new group of people who may have never heard of you before. So being able to utilize someone else's audience is an excellent way to grow your own personal audience. It's no different than a commercial advertising you to people watching the Super Bowl as an expanded example. So not only do you get the opportunity to engage with a new audience and kind of introduce yourself to a whole new set of people, it allows you the benefit of this long form content. So when you are on a podcast, when you are launching your own episodes or being a guest, you are given the opportunity to, in a very expanded form, provide some storytelling, to introduce yourself, to add some value, to educate, whatever it is that is your area of expertise. It gives you the opportunity to do that when you're on a podcast that is very different than social media or written content. So it allows you to bring your personal energy to the conversation and really engage with people in a different way. So you don't have to rely on the first 30 seconds only, like you do with social media, to capture their attention. You are engaging with an audience who came to listen. They are on their morning commute or during their exercise routine. They have settled in to listen for a length of time, and you get to capitalize on that. So that is an amazing way to build rapport with a new audience. Thirdly, I love this about podcasting. It allows you to create evergreen content, which means it's not like social media where you have a reel that posts one day and then disappears. It lives like a library of information. So there are people still today who have heard me on a previous podcast that was recorded years ago. That content lives and it is referable. And so one of the best examples I see of this, and I'm I'm going to try to do a better job moving forward on this show, is when you can refer back to previous episodes. One of my favorite examples of using evergreen content as a reference point in current episodes is Alex Sanfilippo. I think I'm saying his name right. Anyhow, he is the founder of Podmatch, which is a resource that I refer to quite often in my pod launch program, and I will link it below for all of you. It's my affiliate link to Podmatch, which is a service that essentially matches podcast hosts with podcast guests. They have built this algorithm into their tool, which essentially provides you matches each day, kind of like a dating service where you log in each day to see who are your current matches. And their algorithm gets better over time to really align with the right audiences for your topic and your niche. And so it really allows you to, it does the footwork for you essentially. So you don't have to go out and research and find these podcasts. It gives you all of the analytics and the data on each of those shows so you can very easily kind of pick and choose. It's no different than a dating profile in that it is a profile for that particular show, and it allows you to potentially match and pitch yourself to different podcasts. As well as if you are a podcast host, it allows you to very easily find new guests for your show. So it matches you guys. Anyways, Alex, the founder of Podmatch, does an amazing job on his show where in each episode, for real, like every episode I've listened to, he refers back to a previous episode. He'll say episode 145, and he's also made his URLs very simple. So it's, and I'm forgetting the title of his podcast, but it's the title / just the number of the episode. That's the URL, and it's brilliant. Anyways, he is utilizing evergreen content in the best way. And so in that same way, you have the benefit of creating content that will live well beyond the conversation you've had out on the internet. It'll live on YouTube indefinitely. And so you can create content that is timeless. You definitely want to keep that in mind, obviously, when you are showing up as a guest on a show. We're going to talk about this in a little more detail towards the end in terms of how do you maximize your appearance. But you always want to make sure you're having a CTA, a call to action. So you'll notice at the end of all of the podcast series episodes that I have done, I have been pointing you back to my starter toolkit. You want to have a CTA that is not necessarily time bound if you are guesting on someone else's show. I have made that mistake, so let me spare you and save you from that. You don't want to go necessarily and present an offer as your CTA that will expire. Now, it's an excellent mechanism if you have just written a book and you're doing your book launch and you want to go out and introduce the book to the world. Whether you are pre-launch or post-launch, doesn't really matter. Obviously, it can be a great strategy if you are pre-launch to go get the word out before your book is live to the public. However, your book will always exist. So it's not like it expires. If someone happens to come across the episode 2 years down the road, no harm, no foul. In fact, it works to your benefit because it is evergreen. And it sits there and it lives there. So just keep that in mind when you're creating your CTAs. And again, I'm jumping the gun here and talking about something that I'll talk about here in a second. But you just want to keep in mind when you're creating your CTA that it's not something that will expire. And Alex does a great job of using that evergreen content to his benefit. So a really great way to grow listenership on your own show is to refer back to previous episodes. So people are not only listening to the existing one, but then they're popping over and listening to previous episodes. So that's your benefit if you are a podcast guest, that you are helping to create evergreen content and that your appearance on that show sits there and lives there as long as the show is alive. So number 2, okay, we're sold. We think this is a great idea. Yes, I want to be a guest on podcasts. How the heck do I do that? How do I get booked? So first of all, you want to find the right audience. So I told you about Podmatch and how it is matching hosts and guests together. Great. But when you are considering what show makes sense, I would highly recommend for you to not show up on just any old show that will allow you to be a guest on the show. It's quite the ego boost at the beginning, and you're like, this is amazing. Someone wants me on their show. However, you want to give some thought to who their audience is and what their topic is that they're focused on and how you're actually adding value to that audience, but also is that audience the right fit for you and what is your purpose for growing your visibility? So let's say you did write a book and you're wanting to introduce your book to new audiences and get the word out so everyone can read your book. Great. Who is your ideal reader? You want to make sure that that is the audience that you're talking to on any potential podcast. So you want to give some thought to finding the right fit and making sure also that the topics are of interest and the demographics of that audience are your key demographics. So really being specific about who it is that you are looking to expand your audience to. And then you want to make sure that, so not only are you being a little picky and choosy in the beginning, so I know it feels a little scary perhaps when you're first venturing into the arena, you just are hoping anybody will let you be a guest on their show. I will say the more tenured a show is, the choosier they get to be. So the longer a podcast goes on, the longer I have had this show as an example, the pickier I get to be about who comes on the show. And I can maybe make sure they have the right audience size, or they are really honing in on the particular topic that I want to talk about. So I get to be pickier, which means when you're pitching yourself to different podcasts, they also are going to be choosy. So when you are crafting your pitch, you definitely want to start with, I listened to this episode. This was so great. Kind of highlight something about that particular episode. One, it shows that you listened to their show and you know what it's about. So it's, inevitably I will get people who pitch themselves or someone else. There's lots of admins out there doing the work to do the podcast pitching. And people will come to me not necessarily being familiar with my audience or what the show topics are about. And I can very quickly realize that in the pitch. So if I can, so can anybody else, right? So you definitely want to make sure that in your pitch, you're starting off with, it's like any pitch, right? You want to introduce yourself, but you don't want to just come in and be like, hey, I'm so great. Let me tell you all the reasons why I need to be on your show. You need to actually point out that you know something about their show and what you admire about it, some sort of compliment. Like if you're going to criticize someone, you start with a positive first. It's the same concept, right? So it's a warm lead in, and you want to highlight something about an episode that you listen to and why that is relevant to what you are coming to talk about. Above all, what you want to include in your pitch is your value add. What are you going to say that's different than any other guest? What value do you have to their audience that maybe is a different take on the same topic, or your approach to solving their problem is a little bit different than what they've done in most of their episodes? You want to stand out is the key. So if everybody is coming saying your podcast is so great, it's so inspiring, maybe you take a different approach. Maybe you ask a question. In some way, you want to capture their attention. It's the hook that you want so that they read the rest of your pitch. And in the rest of your pitch, I would shy away from making it too long. I'm going to tell you, at this point, I will sit down and set aside an hour or two just to read through all the different pitches that I have to pick and choose from. It can be quite daunting. So keep it brief. Tell them who you are, what problem you solve, what value you'll add for their audience, And that's it. It's really short and simple. And I think whatever it is that is your specialty, you want to highlight that. You want to make sure that you're standing out. You want to stand out from the crowd. And that's where subject lines of your emails will come in handy. Definitely want to get a little creative, but just do something that makes your email stand out from the hundreds of others that they are receiving. So the last topic and the last thing that we'll talk about is how do you maximize the space? So you've pitched, you're on the podcast, and now you have the stage, so to speak. How do you maximize your time with that audience? First of all, you want to be a conscientious guest on the show. So make sure that you've listened to other shows, you've listened to kind of what works well, and bring your A game. You want to really talk to the audience in a way that is engaging and building rapport. Here's some really tactical, specific examples. This is your opportunity to shine. If the guest asks you a question, you don't want to answer with a simple one word or one sentence answer. It's great to be concise, except not always on a podcast. You want to be able to expand on the idea a little bit. This is your opportunity to storytell a little bit. Don't ramble on forever. Keep it kind of short and sweet. But I'll tell you, some of the most difficult guests on my show are the ones who are so concise that they answer each question very, very quickly. And then I'm kind of struggling to pull more out and ask them to elaborate and kind of pull off an idea and ask a follow-up question. You want to make the job of the host as easy as possible so that they love to have you and might want to have you back on the show. If they have to work too hard to pull information out of you, it's not a great start. But at the same time, and this is the opposite end of the spectrum, as a host, I have sometimes had to kind of butt in and stop a very lengthy response and kind of push them along to the next topic. So there's a dance you're doing with the amount of information that you're providing, and you want to tell your story, engage in the audience, add some color to the commentary, but get to your point. And then let's move on to the next question. So you're going to find kind of this balance between being an informative guest and providing a story here and there, but not going on a 30-minute monologue, right? So there's this sweet spot that you're going for. That's one specific way that you can be an engaged participant in the show. And then the other thing that you can do to maximize your visibility. So initially, this is your opportunity to introduce yourself to a new audience, and you want to get their attention. You want them to get to know you. You want them to get to like you in the conversation, and then potentially say, I want to learn a little bit more. How do I engage with this person? That's where your CTA comes in. So the call to action is typically what every host will ask at the end of the show, like how people can find you is how I word it. But essentially, where do people go to find your book? Or where do people go to buy this course? Or how can they find you if they want your offering? Whatever the case may be. Here's my recommendation. I've had many, many guests who will come on this show and they give 18,000 different ways that people can engage with them. After the second one, people are gone. They've lost your point. So I would say pick one. Pick one CTA that says, this is where you go, this is what you do in order to engage with me. So whether that is follow me on Instagram and here's my handle, or go to my website and download my free thing, or whatever the case may be, have one clear, concise CTA so that nobody is left figuring out which is the best way to engage with you. They know there's one way to take action. It keeps things simple. It's no different than sending someone to a website. Kind of e-commerce 101 is to minimize the clicks. You don't want to give people too many options in order to find a way to engage with you. So one of my favorite ways, if you're just out here building credibility and you're not pushing people through a purchase funnel or getting them to buy a book, you're really just wanting people to follow you and be engaged with you, my favorite way is to say, follow me on social media, pick one social media platform and direct them all there. Side little tip, I've actually created the same username on all of my platforms. So I'm simply Shaunna Lee, whether you are finding me on Instagram or Facebook or goodness gracious, Twitter or Threads, bloody blah, I'm all the places, but simply Shaunna Lee, that makes it really easy. But do you see how I just listed off all the social media platforms and already you're like, wait, what? Who? No. The point was simply Shaunna Lee on all social media platforms. So there's a way to make your CTA that crisp and clean as well. So you just want to make sure that you are leaving them with one action to take in order to engage with you, because essentially your spot on a podcast, your guesting on a podcast is your opportunity to invite people to engage with you. You're inviting them into your world. It's like meeting someone at a party and giving them a business card. It's just your invitation to let's keep in touch. Let's keep this conversation going, right? So you want to make sure that you come in as this engaged guest. You want to give them one clear action to take at the end of the conversation. And then thirdly, what I would love for a lot of different people to do, I would love for more of my guests to do this, is to engage with me specifically as the host of the show. So it's great if you can engage with the host of the show and begin to build a relationship with them. And that, goes beyond just following them on social media or sending an email so often. I love when I hear from past guests on my show and they just send an email that says, hey, I loved that episode. Love what you're doing. Just not that I'm needing the kudos, but I love the connection and being able to keep in touch. Here's where that comes in handy for you as a guest on a podcast is when you write your next book, when you have the next product launch, when you have something new to say, when you have maintained that relationship with that particular host of the podcast, it gives you the easy in to come back as a guest on a show again. Here's the thing. Every podcast host intends to grow their show. So when you are a guest on an early up and coming podcast and you stay in touch with that particular host as their show grows and their audience grows, you get the added benefit of being able to come back as a previous guest who they know can answer questions succinctly and also provide the conversation to keep going. If you're a good guest on a show, people will want to have you back. And also, I will say, I love to have my previous guests come back when they have written a new book or they've launched a new business, or especially when so many of us entrepreneurs have businesses that maybe don't go the direction we want, and we shift and we pivot and we have a new business. Being able to have those people come back on, I love to support my guests in that way. So if you are adding some value to their audience and you're staying engaged in ways that make sense, they will want to have you back on the show. And also, don't be afraid to continue listening to their show. Listen, the whole goal is for me to grow my audience, right? So if I have my podcast guests who become my audience, that's amazing. Do you know why? Because then they're going to share my episodes. They're going to forward my social media posts and help me grow my audience because they've engaged with the content and it's connecting. And so in any way that you can give that podcast host some love and give their show some love, the better it will be for you. And that's another way that you can show up and be the most engaging guest, and you can maximize your appearance. So to wrap up everything that we've talked about, podcast guesting is a great way for you to utilize someone else's audience to increase your visibility and to build your credibility. The one thing I didn't mention that I will now is, when you are looking for social proof, or you have written an article, or you are published in some sort of, in a magazine or what have you, it creates content that increases your credibility. So much like writing a book gives you this content to kind of back up your credibility, it lets you stand out and be recognized as an expert in your field. So when you are guesting on podcasts, it's giving you a boost to your social cred, and it gives you the ability to say, oh, hey, I've been a guest on this podcast as your social proof. So it is a great mechanism. It's a terrific strategy to move forward and increase your visibility just by being a guest on a podcast. So we talked about why it works. We talked about how to be a great guest and how to also get booked, and then to maximize that opportunity that you're being given to your benefit and also to the benefit of that audience. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, I invite you all to engage with me and follow and subscribe and like and all the things, right? Here's my CTA for you today. So if you are looking to be a guest on podcasts, be sure to click on my affiliate link to Podmatch so that you can get signed up today and get matching with podcasts that are a good match for you and a good fit for you. So remember, your story matters and people need to hear it. Let's build something extraordinary together. Until next time, friends.